Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are now continuing what we began yesterday in the book Likuti Torah. We're starting book, a new book of the Torah and a new book of Chassidut. Let's first of all give charity. Here we go. Charity saves from all bad things and it brings all good things. Here we go. Ready? Charity. God bring a speedy recovery to all the sick people and protect all of our soldiers and destroy all of our enemies or transform all of our enemies soon, right now. Okay, going back, what did we learn? The Torah, of course, was given by God to the Jewish people. Everybody saw it. Millions and millions of people, eyewitnesses, they saw it. But that did not take away their free will. Exactly the opposite. God is telling all the Jewish people that you are good. The world is good. Everyone's made in the image of God. But I covered it over. I covered it over, and you have to reveal it. And that's the whole idea of the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple was a place where you had to work, avodah. You had to do work. Work on what? Mainly on yourself. Mainly on yourself. They had to work on themselves. How did a person work on himself? In the time of the Holy Temple, they brought sacrifices. Sacrifices. That was the main thing in the Holy Temple. There was also incense they burned, and also the menorah that they lit. But the main thing in the Holy Temple was songs that they sang. There was bread offerings also. But the main thing were the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices. So the whole point of the sacrifices is summed up in like the third sentence of this week's Torah portion. And it says, Adam ki yakri mekem, a person when he sacrifices from you. In other words, the sacrifice has to come from you. And the word for sacrifice, which is translated into English as sacrifice, well, in a way, you sort of have to do it, make a sacrifice. But the word really means in Hebrew is also the same letters as to come close. So a person has to make himself close to the Creator. In order to do that, he has to sacrifice his his mistakes, his misconceptions in life, his selfishness, his egotism, his attachment, over-attachment to the world, over-attachment to himself, over-attachment to selfishness, right? That all he wants to do is he wants to go to heaven, he wants to get pleasures in this world and the world to come. A person has to give that up. That's called making a sacrifice. But the word for sacrifice in Hebrew, in this case, it means not, the goal is not just to give up things and to get rid of bad. That's sort of like the means. The goal is to do good, to love God, to come to realize how good God is and to love God because God is creating us. It's a very basic thing in life is appreciation, gratitude, very essential element of life to be grateful. And if a person is not grateful to the Creator, so he can never really be happy. She can never be happy because you're living in a false world. You're living in a false world. You're living in a world where you think that you are the end of everything, that the world ends with you. Right? You ever see one of those? I remember they used to have in New York, I used to live in New York, they used to have in these stores, they would sell these interesting things, the T-shirts with "I love New York" on it. Then they would have a map of the world. They would have a map of the world. What's the map of the world? 98% of it was New York City. And then in a little corner was like Europe, and a little farther was Russia. And it was, I'm everything. I'm everything. Where I am, that's everything. To the point where now there's even people that they say that, according to quantum physics, all that exists is my imagination. my imagination. Where'd your imagination come from? So this feeling is a feeling that God gave us. God purposely covered over the truth. God covered over the truth, and he wants us to transform this covering to holiness. That's the whole thing. But we can transform this covering to holiness. Reveal the reason why God is creating us. What's he creating us for? Why is he making all this, so to speak, effort, creating all these blades of grass and all these trees and winds and things like that. What's he doing it for? So it's a whole new type of reality where there won't be any more boredom, and every instant we'll be interested and we'll feel responsibility to God, and we'll feel appreciative that we're lucky that we're even being created. Okay, so that's what's called the holy temple. They would bring sacrifices and they would feel this. They would feel like I say, when a person feels God, it does not eliminate his his, how do you say, selfishness automatically, but it gives him an option to his selfishness. It gives him an option. Before, he thinks that all there is just him. So, like, going back to my example of the map of New York, and instead of New York being like, where I stand is like 98% of the world, suddenly it becomes only 95%. God is a little bit bigger, and then it becomes 90%. And then you realize, well, maybe God is a little more than 10. Maybe God is like 15%, and then 20%. But it becomes more and more real until ideally you come to realize that all there is God, and God is creating me. Right? But this is difficult work. Okay, so now we don't have a temple. But what we do have is ourselves and the Torah. And not only that, even when God did give us the temple as the main work you had to do on your own, even in the time of the temple. First of all, temple sacrifices only dealt with, 99% of the sacrifices were only for what's called sins done in ignorance, shogeg. Let's say in accidental sins, purposeful sins the temple didn't fix up. There were no sacrifices if you did a purposeful sin. Purposeful sins, you had to repent on your own and do whatever you want. And also even the accidental sacrifices, you also had to repent on your own. But you had the sacrifices that were there to help you. Okay, so how did they help? This is what happened then when a person made a sacrifice, as he became more of a human being. He became more of a human being. That's why it says Adam ki yakri. A person became more like Adam. Adam is the first man. And Adam is called Adam because he was made in the image of the Adam, the man that's sitting on the throne that Isaiah saw and that Ezekiel saw. So we're talking about here how to come to a direct connection to God, which is in the ability and in the responsibility of every human being. Jews first. And now it's telling you how to do it. And when a person comes in contact with the Creator and realizes that God is creating me, He's creating everything, then there's love. And then your heart opens up. Instead of loving yourself, which every normal person does, it starts to love God. Like I said, the picture becomes, and instead of the 98% me and 2% God or 1% God, suddenly it becomes, maybe there's only 80% me, 20% God. Maybe it becomes 50-50. Oh, that's pretty good. That's amazing. Then it becomes, because if we're talking about feeling here. Okay. So how we're in this world is eskafia v'eshapcha. That's the name of the game. Eskafia and eshapcha. What's eskafia and eshapcha? That's the means, the means by which, that's a general means, the rules of the game. Eskafia and eshapcha. Eskafia means forcing yourself to do what's right and avoid what's bad. And eshapcha means actually enjoying doing what's right and hating doing what's bad. Eskafia means you have to force yourself. You have to use willpower to do what God wants and avoid what God wants. And eshapcha means that you enjoy, you realize the truth of it, of doing okay. I know by means of God. This is by means. How do you do this? By your godly soul. This is especially for Jews. We talked about this yesterday. And by a Jew thinking, you have to think. You have to contemplate into the greatness of God. And Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. That's the motto of Judaism. 6 words. It's a sentence in the Torah. It's a sentence in the Torah. Not far from the beginning of the Torah. Shema Yisrael. It's a 6-word sentence. It says, listen, understand, Jews. Think. Shema means understand. Understand, Jews, God is our God. God is one. And you will love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might. By means of thinking into God, contemplating, is it really true? God is really creating me. That God really exists before the world. God is creating time. When you think about this, that God is creating everything right now, God gave the Torah. God took us out of Egypt. God listens to our prayers. God cares about us. God provides for us. When you think about this, you come to love God with all of your heart. Mishnei Yitzarecha says, with all of your heart means all of your hearts. Even this covering over that covers God will also come to appreciate God because God is creating the whole thing. And again, we're talking about reality here. We're not talking about just theory. We're not talking about Kabbalistic theory and explaining all these upper worlds and things like that. We're talking about reality, who we really are. This depends on a lot of humility, because we're embodying this fact. Let's not say embodying, we're realizing it. It's already there, we just have to realize it. But before a person says this Kriya Shema, Tiknu Chachamim, the rabbi said that there have to be blessings before Shema. Why? Because the blessing talk about how God created the world. You have to look at a Jewish prayer book and see, because it's impossible to subjugate and to conquer your what's called your natural soul, your natural selfishness by your godly soul, unless you have to get to the source. This is where we got up to the source of the animal soul. Shemokar chutzpah, that its source is from the Chayos HaKodesh, from the faces of the animals which were around the throne that Ezekiel saw, Isaiah also saw. He saw a face of a lion, the face of an ox. Because Ein Adinim Nimtakim Ela B'Shorsham, very important sentence, and I want to explain it. Ein Adinim, that severities, all the bad things in the world cannot be sweetened up unless you get to the source. Like it says in another place, etc. Another. Okay, so what does it mean? Let's say, for instance, let's take an example. If you could, okay, two enemies are fighting, right? Two enemies are fighting, and suddenly their mother comes and says, "What are you boys fighting about? Why are you fighting? I love both of you. Stop fighting," right? All of a sudden, both of them think, "Wow, I forgot about mother. I forgot about father. I forgot that we're brothers. We have big differences. You have differences, but don't think about the differences. Think about the point that's similar. Think about what you have in similar, right? Like sometimes people have a common enemy. So because they have a common enemy, that unites them. They have to have some uniting factor in order to do away with contention, to do with the same thing as your animal soul opposes God. It opposes God because what is God? God is the opposite of selfishness. God is the feeling that I'm being created. I'm so grateful to God, He's creating me. As soon as a person feels that, then all of his selfishness that he has, the selfish feeling that he had, and the fact that he got angry, and the fact that he got depressed, and the fact that he had big desires, and he got addictions, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But if he can really start to feel, one second, this desire I have for drugs, for getting angry, for lusting things, for getting depressed, getting miserable, that all comes from the fact that I forgot about where I came from. I thought that I'm alone. I thought that I'm like this map, on the wall, that I'm 99% of the world, and that God is a little tiny, maybe He's not even there at all. He's in the synagogue, if at all, in the rabbi's head. But as soon as it becomes more and more, then you realize, wow, I'm being created. My ego is being created. So a person can say, well, so then I'm, let's say a person is a thief. So God's creating me to be a thief. That's good. I'm going to be a thief. It says, but maybe you should look at what God says. That's your point of view. But God says in the Torah, you're not supposed to steal. So all of a sudden you realize that from your source of your soul, of your life, the source of your life is creating you to be a thief so that you can go against it, so that you can transform it. What's going to be if I don't be a thief? Try it and you'll see. Right? I know I said this before, but I'll say it again. I was thinking about this yesterday. Let's say Hitler was a really bad guy. A really bad guy. I mean, he was a bad guy if you go according to Jewish standards, but if you go according to Nazi standards, he was the best of the best. Who's going to make the standard? That's the whole thing. Okay, but let's say according to Jewish standards, what should he have done? Hitler. He should have not gotten in front of people and not start, rabble rousing for war. And not that, you have any idea how good he was at that? He was like maybe the biggest expert in the world, the most successful rabble rouser that ever existed. His speeches were hypnotized millions. They not only hypnotized millions, after he finished speaking, his words rang in their souls and in their hearts, and they were willing to go out and to die and to kill and to do the worst possible things you could. But and they in snow and in sleet and in hail and to starve and to this and to this and to fight day and night for for the sake of this one person. Okay, what was he supposed to do? To be quiet. Don't get up on the stage. Don't talk. Don't talk. They really expect a person to how do you say, to forego, to give up all of that success and that standing in front of crowds that were millions of people that loved him, without question for years. How could he do it? So he says that's what he was supposed to do. That's what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to just keep quiet. Then what would have been with him? He would have lived a productive life, or at least he wouldn't have destroyed so many people. In other words, what are we saying? If the Yetzer Hora, the evil impulse, becomes negated, then new things come out, new things that you didn't think. Like, who would dream that, Stalin or Hitler or whatever, that they could be, a productive bricklayer or painter or something, except for a mass murderer. Well, every one of us has a little Hitler inside of us, every one of us, and a little Stalin inside of us, and a little Mao Zedong, and a little communist, and a little Nazi, and a little. Every one of us has that inside of us, especially the Jews. Every human being is a macrocosm of the whole world. So we've got all these terrible things inside of it. How can we possibly change this? How can we change it? So the Rebbe says, by contemplating. You have to think. Does God really exist? Is God really creating me? Is there such a thing as the Torah, the commandments? God really cares about what we do. God listens to our prayers. God really provides for us. Right? That just doesn't make any sense. It's just insane, right? Says, yeah, think about it a little bit, and you realize that it's not so insane. Here we have one person that really believes it. He really feels it. The Rebbe. He feels the truth. It's not just an option. It's an obligation. You can believe that, Greenland exists or not. You can believe, but the fact is that it exists. It exists. By means of this, by means of this, there becomes even that godly soul. That's what we got up to yesterday. That godly soul, like it says, like it says in the vision. I think it's of Ezekiel. Is it? Anyway, he says that the animals under the throne, they elevate the throne of God. So it explains the throne of God is the world of Bria, whatever it is, and God is sitting on the throne. So it, so to speak, gives an elevation to God. Now, is that possible? Well, we learn in our Torah portion that when the Jewish people made sacrifices, so it gives pleasure to God. When a person gets pleasure, he's elevated. Reach nichoach, it says nachat ruach. Oh, this is where we got up to, right? By means of our work in this world, is it makes reach nichoach l'Hashem. It makes a pleasing spirit to God. That's what it says, that there's a pleasing spirit to God, a pleasing smell. Nachat ruach. This level is what? An arousal from below, and this causes God to react. God himself personally reacts, and he makes an arousal from above. But there's also what's called an arousal from above by God, that he does it on his own. And he arouses us. I forgot what we got up to yesterday, and we did this yesterday also, but it's worthwhile going over. It says that the pupils of the first Rebbe of Chabad, they used to go over these discourses, and they were big geniuses. They used to go 500 times. 500 times. Because it's so, in order to really incorporate this in our every aspect of our being, that it's the truth. It's not just, a method of, something. This is the truth. We're talking about what God really is, and that God really is really creating us. So they used to go over it 500 times in order to really incorporate this in themselves. That we just had a few days ago that the Maggid of Mezrich said to the Alter Rebbe, right? Eish tamid tukadal mizbeach. He said it 10 times in order to ingrain it in the 10 aspects of his soul. So going over it is not so, is is not so optional. It's almost an obligation to do. So there is an arousal from above that God arouses us, first of all, that we even want to serve him. And afterwards, just how God created the world. First of all, God created the world on his own, and then he did it all on his own. And afterwards, God reacted to what we did. But nevertheless, even though that there has to be an arousal from below that we have to work, but nevertheless, it's drawn down an arousal from above first to arouse us to serve God from below. Inspiration, like it says in another place. Yuvan said we can understand this now in the service of God. In other words, we are not alone. God cares about us no matter what we do. That's in the Psalms. It says in the book of Song of Songs, it says, "Call Dodi Dofik, the sound of my beloved is knocking." Knocking. That God knocks first. Let me in. We can see there's two types of service of God. One of them is an arousal from below that a person has to work very hard. And he has to control himself. Yigiyat nefesh v'yigiyat basar. He has to think very deeply and he has to really work on himself and not to follow his desires, not to get angry, not to etc. To think very deeply, and to think very deeply into what God really is. And with a leiv nishbar, with a broken heart. Why a broken heart? Because your heart wants to do whatever it wants. Wants to do whatever it wants. That's what. Like I don't want to bring up the example anymore. So let's bring the example. Let's say you ever see videos, short videos. I've seen a couple of pictures. Lenin speaking. Now Lenin, the fact is, Lenin was not much better than Stalin was. He was also a big mass murderer. He just didn't. Anyway, he didn't have enemies like Stalin. They say Stalin killed Lenin, whatever it was. But if you ever saw him speak, or Trotsky is maybe even a better example. Trotsky was Jewish. It was like a mass murderer. The guy was like a really super evil person. But if you ever saw him speak, you don't even hear what he's saying. You don't understand what he's saying. You can see that he's just totally into what he's saying, and the people are just hypnotized with what he says. Right now, each one of us has a little Trotsky inside of us that really enjoys something about this world. Something about this world. Success, attention, revenge, right? Some people are worse than, they're worse. Laziness, being lazy, getting depressed, it just becomes, that's the real me. You just can't get out of it. Well, you can get out of it, but you have to break your heart. You have to break your heart. This pleasure that I get from this little Trotsky inside of me that gets pleasure from whatever the thing is that it gets pleasure from in this world, he's wrong. He's wrong. I have to stop it. The soul can come with a gilur, with a revelation of light, kirvas elokim, revealing God. Then you can come to arousal from below and arousal from above. That's one. So sometimes you have to work really, really hard. Really, really hard, and really think about it. Is it really true? And more people are doing this now. It's really happening now. Eventually, you should know that the whole entire Christian religion and all the Muslims, everybody in the world is going to do this, right? They all believe in their religions because it gives them comfort and it gives them promise and it gives them direction and it gives them meaning. And they have teachers that teach them, and they're all enthusiastic, and you don't want to burn in hell and you want to go to heaven, and people feel comforted. I have a goal in my life. I have a way in my life, but it's wrong. It's wrong. So all the comfort that people get from these things, how do you know it's wrong? Because it brings them to hate Judaism. It brings them to hate the Torah. Or they hate the rabbis, whatever it is. So all of these people, the comfort that they get from these religions, or from these, from communism or wokeism or whatever it is, right? These people they're going to have to break their hearts. They're going to say, wait, I'm making a mistake. Wow. And then start to think, well, what is right, and to change their pattern of living and to change their pattern of action and speech and thought is very difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy, especially because all these things have some good aspects to them. Good aspects to them, right? You look at the Nazi rallies in Nuremberg. There's videos, there's movies, right? That was the expert at it. You see the look in the people's eyes. They pan the crowd, and people have like hope and purpose and and meaning in life, and they're all young and happy and jubilant, and they're flushed with enthusiasm and this and this. Well, you're going to take that away from everybody? How can you take it away from them? Right? That's a very difficult thing. He says, yeah, but that's what you have to do. Well, each one of us has that inside of us. And to take that away from ourselves is not easy to do. Therefore, it takes a lot of thinking and saying, listen, one second, you go to the rally without me. I want to think about this for a second. Right? I want to think about this. Maybe this is wrong. Maybe this is not the right thing to do. Maybe I should change trains. I should get off I'm in the wrong direction. But to think about this in life is not easy. That's called working from below, getting rid of the bad and doing good, forcing yourself. That's what we said before, eskafia, forcing yourself. And then after that, God reacts, God helps you. But the second one is, sometimes that a person suddenly gets inspired without any effort at all. Like we say, there are a lot of people that suddenly they get excited. Their heart gets enthusiastic about God. Their heart and their brain in prayer. For a certain amount of time. You pray every day from the siddur and you say the words, and all of a sudden one day these words make sense to you. Wow. You, God, you are alone. You created the heavens, you created the earth. Right? And you enliven everything and you create everything. Suddenly it makes sense. Right? Suddenly, all of a sudden, without any reason. They don't know where it came to them, this arousal. And in a short amount of time, it goes away. This is especially, for 30 years, I taught in a yeshiva of Bali Tshuva. 30 years. Right? Was it from 1982 until 2012, something like that. I taught in a yeshiva for Bali Tshuvas. And really after that also. Okay, but you saw and I myself in the beginning was like that. What's a Bali Tshuva? Bali Tshuva are Jews that they suddenly realize what Judaism is. And they decide to take it really seriously. They decide to they're going to live their life according to the Torah. They're only going to eat kosher and they're only going to do the commandments and they're not going to work on Shabbat and they're going to, put on tefillin and they're going to pray 3 times a day. And suddenly they realize, I got to do what God says. I'm not going to do what I want. And sometimes they get tremendously enthusiastic. You see, like King David, the Psalms of King David, how he's praising Hashem, and the enthusiasm in God. Where did it come from? Before that, they were enthusiastic about, partying or making money or being successful or, anything that normal people are excited about. And suddenly they become excited about Judaism, like we say over here. Where did it come from? They don't know. Maybe they had some Chabad emissary talk to them. Somebody put tefillin on them. They saw on television they saw on television, Jewish people, religious people, something about the Holocaust, something about the land of Israel, something about this. All of a sudden, something inspired them to do Torah and the commandments. Something inspired them. Where did it come from? They don't know. Well, it comes from God. And it comes from God, free gift, free sample, introductory offer. Suddenly gets excited, and then all of a sudden one day, all this excitement goes away. I've seen this happen a lot of times. People get tremendously enthusiastic about, well, I'm going to live the life like Rabbi Akiva did, like Isaiah the prophet did, like Moses and Aaron did. That's the truth. Jews have been doing it for 3,000 years. I'm going to do it what God wants, and sometimes they get married, and all of a sudden one day, somebody says something bad to them, or somebody cheats them, or somebody says a not nice word, whatever, or they get an argument with their wife, and they say, "That's it, I'm finished." Right? Hey, what happened to your beard? What happened? That's you? What happened to your beard? See you around. Right? I'm leaving. I'm getting out. What happened? What happened? He says, I'm asking what happened in the beginning. Why did I get excited? Suddenly it just goes away. Really, this is an arousal from above. Rak, it's only an arousal from above. It is an arousal from above that the order to arouse us from below. It's like a starter in your pilot light on your oven. Almost you could okay. This is just telling us to look in another place. What's the difference if I work on my own from below, or whether I get a sudden arousal from above, free gift? What's the difference? Nafkusa, the difference between that and arousal from that arousal from below, that you do the work first, and that draws down help and assistance from God, or God assists you first on its own. He does it on his own. What's the difference? Because when a person really works on it on his own, then it's a thing. Then it can last forever. Because arousal from below, by means of your work, that arouses something from above. This is revealed from panemius, from the inside, comes from you. Okay, what's the Rebbe talking about? Getting excited about God. There's two ways. Either you work really hard at it, or you get it as a free gift. Which would you rather have? Who would want to have a free gift? What's the question? Right? Would you rather work for $1,000 or get a free gift for $1,000? So what's the question? I want to work. I want a free gift. I'm sorry. I don't want to work. I want a free gift. And says, yeah, but if you get a free gift, you don't appreciate it as much. I don't care. I want a free gift of $1,000. Give me a free. Says the Rebbe, it's the same thing with loving God, with life in general. Right? You get a free gift, you don't appreciate it. If you have to work hard, you do. Two examples. The example of the free gift that's not appreciated is the Jews being taken out of Egypt. They got a free gift. God took them out of Egypt, gave them the Torah, did everything. At the first opportunity, when they thought they were alone, they got scared. They didn't know what to do. They went back. Wanted to go back to Egypt. They worshiped the golden calf. They went crazy. The example of working from below, that's what Judaism really is. The first example is, of course, Abraham. Abraham did everything from below. Another example is King David. King David, it says, was the Mashiach. The Maimonides says King David was the first Mashiach. We're waiting for Mashiach ben David. He only had troubles. He believed in God, did the Torah, and all he had was troubles, enemies from all sides. Had to fight battles all of his life. It was always, read Psalms, you'll see. So here, which one is better? Which one is better? So you say, well, listen, I'd rather be, just get free gifts all the time. That's certainly the best, get free gifts. He says, yeah, but if you look at it closely, you'll see that it's not so. That those who worked really hard, that their love remained. And in fact, that's the name of the Jewish people. Look how much trouble the Jewish people as a whole, one body, went through. The Holocaust, and they were expelled from England and from France and from Spain and from Italy and they were expelled. Portugal, they were expelled from almost every country in the world. Right? I think if it wasn't for the American elections now changing, they would have been expelled from America too. They were getting expelled from all these universities. And therefore, by means of this, it gives power in your soul that you can be an arousal from below. So it says, first of all, if a person works from below really hard, then when he comes to love God, then when there are disappointments and when there are frustrations and when things don't go the way you want to, like with King David, then it's strong. It's strong. Then you're willing to overlook any obstacles. You don't teach them as obstacles. You treat them as challenges, or even more, you treat them as opportunities. Right? God put me in the world to fix up the bad in the world, and He's bringing the bad to me to fix up. Liars and cheaters and people that get you angry, and these are just opportunities to fix up the world. That's why I'm here. Why? Because you started from your own on yourself, which is not the case. If you don't work so hard in the beginning, you don't really work on yourself from below. Only you arouse from below. You're gifted. You're gifted. You're very smart. You're very intelligent. You're Yerovam ben Navat. Yerovam ben Navat. Gifted person, tremendous genius. It was in the first temple. God chose him to take the 10 tribes. It went to his head. He went berserk. It's impossible to understand what happened to him. And suddenly he made 2 golden calves, and he wanted the Jewish people to stay up in the north, didn't want it to go down to whatever it was. But he became the example of a person who sinned and made everybody else sin. And he knew it, but he couldn't stop himself. Why couldn't he stop? Because everything he had was a gift. Everything he had was a gift. He was talented. He was a genius. He was spiritual. He knew the whole Torah. He knew everything. But he didn't really work on his own. Therefore, his feeling of connection to God, it can go away, but over and say dissipate. His excitement. It doesn't last. Because as soon as God's inspiration leaves this person, it only shines a certain times. It's like it never was there. Hitpalut was because of a reason. There's a joke about that. All right, because it just comes from a revelation from above. And therefore, but as soon as the light, the inspiration of God goes away, but then there's no love for God anymore. That's why the Jewish people worship the golden calf. Right? That's why they worship the golden calf in the desert. Idolatry is fun. Idolatry feels good. Idolatry is comforting. Idolatry, you ask 2.5 billion Christians, they'll tell you. It's comforting, it's promising, it's how do you say, it's calming. Huh? Says that's because if you don't have a true. On the other hand, there were people, a lot of Jews, especially like in the time of the Inquisition, for instance, that they tied Jews up to the stake and said, "Leave your Judaism, or we'll kill you." That was the story of Purim, right? We're going to kill all the Jews. Just say you're not a Jew, and we won't kill you. I'm a Jew. Suddenly, something happened from below to above. That's the idea of, what's the joke? I'll tell you the joke. A man is falling from a building, and he screams out, God, please help me. If you help me, please, if you save me, I'll do anything. I'll be religious. I'll be a religious. He was a Jew. I'm not religious. I'll be a religious Jew. I'll keep Shabbos. I'll give all of my money to charity. And sure enough, he's driving the last minute, right before he hits the ground, 100 floors, as it comes on the road, a big truck full of hay, huge truck full of hay, and he falls right into the middle of the hay, and nothing happens to him. And he says, God, listen, that what I said about, becoming religious and this, when I'm nervous, I say really stupid things. I just can't control myself. When I'm nervous. And it was a big miracle, but it happened too easy. When it happened too easy, so all of a sudden this big inspiration that he had when he was falling down, right, and his life was at stake, and he was all aroused, it went away. There was arousal. Then all of a sudden his promises go away and his devotion goes away. This is the whole idea of Ish Mazria Techila Yolidas Nekeva. V'nashim datam kalot. The Jewish people are called God's wife. They're called God's wife. So it's a saying, and we've talked about this before, but we're going to have to stop soon. It says that if a woman gives seed first, then the child is a male. Male means strong, powerful, can withstand all difficulties. So if the female gives seed first, that's the Jewish people. If they work first, then the offspring, the love that's born in the Jewish people will be male, it'll be masculine. If it starts off that we're the instigator, then the love that comes is masculine, strong. But if the male gives seed first, in other words, God sends down his inspiration and he's the one that inspires us, then the resultant love, the child that's born, will be feminine. It'll be weak. It won't be able to stand up the difficulties of war. If the woman, she gives seed first, then because there'll be an arousal from below, and afterwards that causes the arousal from above. In other words, he serves God from the darkness. He serves God unconditionally. Then afterwards there'll be an arousal from above, and it'll be stronger. Yolet Zachar, it'll be masculine. Shehu Dat Chazak, this is a strong awareness of God. Okay, here it says different places, etc., etc. I see, but this is the reason why that Kobli Matzma, the people complain, Bali Avoda, people that serve God, and they're really thinking about God. Al Hayos Behem Ruach Tahora, that sometimes they get a tremendous inspiration, Fit Arot Lavodat Hashem, to serve God, at Kama Shvuot, a few weeks. And afterwards it goes away. Suddenly they feel uninspired, suddenly they feel not happy to serve God. The reason is because the arousal was from above. You didn't really make a proper preparation. After Hifsakas, therefore, after this arousal from above goes away, then a person goes back to his own nature. Okay, so this is very relevant to us. I mean, this is very, very practical because Judaism depends on inspiration. I once went into the Rebbe, and on my birthday used to go in, and I said, I'm lacking inspiration. And the Rebbe said, inspiration is very important. That's all that he said. Inspiration is very important. But we can learn from Abraham that Abraham served God. The whole world was against him. That's why he's called an Ivri. Ivri means on the other side. The whole world was against him, but he was stuck on the truth. True, God gave him an inspiration in the beginning, a little bit, but the inspiration was to search for the truth. What is really true? Is there really a creator? Does God really love me? Does God really care? Does God really exist? Is God really creating the upper worlds? Can I have a direct connection with God himself? Is it really possible? Abraham had all these questions, and all he got from all of his searching was just troubles. God gave him what's called 10 tests. Until this God that he worshipped so much and it was so good and so wonderful God said, I love you, God, unconditionally. God said, unconditionally, yes. No matter what, I love you. You can do whatever you want to. Okay, take your son and kill him. Let's see. And Abraham said he woke up early in the morning and he went and did the worst possible, most heinous thing that a person could possibly do, a Jew to kill his own child. Even just to think about it is and Abraham did it with happiness, with happiness to go in. Of course, in the end, he didn't do it. Thank God, and we're here. But that attitude of loving God unconditionally from below, that's what gave the arousal from above to all the Jewish people to be able to do it through all the generations. As we'll talk about, God willing, more tomorrow.